Hi, everyone. Kathy Beltran with Sacred Dance with Trance. I'm super excited today to have Nicole De Haas, a physical medium from Holland, with us today. And she is actually a tutor with the AFC. She also has her own center of mediumship and training that's also connected with Zwanenhof. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
In Holland, it's a spiritualist group. Facility center in Europe, the biggest one there. So I am so glad to have you, Nicole. So everybody, welcome Nicole to the group or to the interview today.
Thank you.
And I'm a little nervous. I'm sorry. I'm just a little nervous today.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. What we have is, it's a little bit different this time because I actually did a post in the group asking for better questions. And we have so many of the members, they contributed it. So all of these questions are from the members. And so this is a beautiful part because these interviews only get better with better questions. So I figure what we would do is I always start with it's how everything started with you, your journey, how it started from the beginning of your mental mediumship all the way to the trance. Could you let us know how that started for you?
Well, actually, I can remember when I go back into my childhood, I did not grow up in an environment where mediumship was accepted, so to say. You know, my father is an atheist. My mom had a Catholic background, but still, you know, I could not really develop my sensitivity in that sense. So it took about 11 years. I was 11 years old, and then I had my really first profound experience, and that was when we moved from the city to the countryside. And we moved into an old farmhouse and with a lot of land around it. And I had my new bedroom there. And the bedroom was located next to a part of the garden. And there was next to the bedroom window. And I remember one afternoon I was spending time in my bedroom and I was 11 years old. And suddenly there was this girl in my bedroom. And I saw her as clear as I see you on the screen.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, what's happening, you know? And at the time she told me her name, she told me her age, and she told me that she was buried next to my bedroom in the garden.
Wow.
So I went downstairs to my mom, you know, all excited and, you know, Mom, you have to listen, this and this is what happened. And she said, no, it's just your fantasy. So, you know, I left it at that time. But a few months later, my parents decided to reorganize the garden, and they hired a big machine and some guys who changed the garden, and they removed also those high bushes. And they found the grave with the exact name and age of the girl that was in my bedroom.
Oh my goodness, wow.
So that was a really profound experience that I had when I was 11 years old, but also the only very vivid experience, so to say, in my childhood. You know, I was a very scared child. I was afraid of the dark. I was so sensitive. I could easily cry over everything. You know, I was just a very sensitive child. But I had not many vivid experiences with people in the spirit world because I thought it was my imagination all the time. So it took me actually into years later when I got involved into healing and psychic development first, and then eventually into mediumship, that all the pieces of the puzzle, so to say, fell into place, and I started to understand the way I was.
Wow.
But it took quite some years.
Oh my goodness. A lot of people can relate to that, you know, not having that background and then the fears as well. But oh my God, that must have been an amazing thing to have your family find this grave, you know, later on. Wow, amazing.
Yes, and you know, I went into the area in my working career, into the area of psychology, social work. I worked for 10 years in child welfare work. I've got 3 adopted kids from the United States.
Oh.
And my eldest daughter came into our family and she had a lot of medical problems. I wasn't doing too well at that moment in my own job. So I decided to stop and to focus my attention on our daughter. So that's what I did for a couple of years. And then slowly the healing and, psychic development and then the mediumship came in. But I remember it was 15 years ago when I met another medium, and she said to me at that time, one day you will work as a medium for a large amount of people. And I said, no, I won't. And I laughed it away, I just thought she was making a joke because I couldn't believe it myself. But eventually, yes, I did go on the track of mediumship. I moved to the east of Holland because my husband found a different job. I did some other courses and I became a kinesiologist, and I wanted to start my own practice in the East. And then suddenly a man came in and he said, I want healing. But I apparently said something to him and he said, oh, you have to go to the Arthur Findlay College. And I said, what's that? Because I never heard of it, So that's how it all started. So I became curious and I just wanted to look it up. So I did. I went on the website and whatsoever. And that was in 2007 that I booked my first weekend course. Wow. So that's the time where it all started.
Wow.
Yes.
So how did you go from mental mediumship? First you went with the healing, then the psychic, and then the mediumship. How did you go into physical mediumship? How did that start for you?
Well, to be honest, I never thought of becoming a physical medium. I never thought of becoming a medium, The thing is that I learned to listen to the spirit world, and I can tell you that was a hard job because I can be quite stubborn and I moved into different areas as well. But eventually this came on my pathway, and I will explain, because in 2008 I had my first week course at the Arthur Findlay College, and I really did not have much experience in mental mediumship, just that one weekend. So I was invited in a sanctuary to come on platform and to demonstrate a contact. And I said to the teacher, I've no clue what to do. And he said, just do it. So I basically did something, but not really knowing what I was doing. And he was just writing on a flip chart everything that I mentioned. And eventually it turned out to be a wonderful contact for him. Wow. And all the evidence was correct. And I got names, I got a lot of specific pieces of evidence. And I had no clue at the time where I got it from. Well, apparently it was the spirit world, but I did not really know at that time how it all worked. So based on that, I can actually say that it was naturally there. So the mental mediumship, I did not get any training to be able to give that information. I just did it. I only needed to learn to understand the mechanics. I needed to learn, okay, so what's happening? So basically learning a new language. So that's what happened in 2008. About a year later, I decided to do a trance workshop, but just a 2-day or 1 day, maybe even, workshop. And I had not sit for trance at that time, and I just went into it, with an open mind. So that day I found out in a way that it wasn't for me at that time, because I have a monkey mind. My mind can be all over the place. And especially at that time, I was struggling and fighting to go somewhere where I should feel peaceful and relaxed, and it didn't work. But there was one experience that the spirit world gave me, and sometimes they give you those moments to show you the potential. And that's what they did on that day, where I thought, oh, this is not for me. We had to do an exercise in front of the group and trying to get into that altered state and to allow the spirit world to blend with you, and just to say a few words if something came up. So I went into that altered state, or at least I did my very best, and my heart was bouncing out of my body and I was sweating all over, and I was really nervous, but something happened at that time. And suddenly I started speaking in Hindi, in a different language I did not know.
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
only 3 or 4 words, and then it stopped and it disappeared. But fortunately, there was a lady and she could everything. I said some beautiful words in a language that I don't know. So that was actually an experience I had once, and it never happened again.
Oh my goodness.
So that was my first trance experience, so to say. So I went home after that day and thought, okay, I'm going to sit for trance once a week, an hour, and just sit. Well, I tried, but it didn't work, so I left it. And it was about, I think, a year later when it slowly came back. It was like that calling from within, you have to sit now. And that's what I started doing from that moment. And then slowly it unfolded into trance, basically. The physical mediumship came in, I think it was in 2012 when I started my own physical circle. But, you know, spirit moves in mysterious ways, and they always have a plan. And sometimes they have a plan, and it's a good thing that we are not aware of it. Because in 2010, I started sitting with a group of people just for the spirit world. It was not a real circle, but we just joined together every fortnight and we sat together. No clue what to do or whatsoever, but we just sat for spirit and offered our time. And at that time, quite a well-known medium asked to be part of a physical circle, and he asked if we would sit for him. And I said, well, yeah, of course. So we did. And he came into my home every 2 weeks. And we sat for almost 2 years. But to be honest, nothing happened. Nothing really happened at that time. So he decided to stop. But what happened, my husband was in that same circle, and he built a cabinet for that other medium. I would have never asked someone to build me a cabinet and to think of going into that direction at all. But the cabinet was in my home because it was built for someone else at first. And when that stopped, you know, it remained in my home. And one evening I remember that I felt drawn into it. And I thought, oh, let's just sit and see what happens. So I did, you know, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience. I fell into a trance state, but suddenly I felt a very sharp pain while I was sitting in trance. And it was very painful, and it almost took me out of the trance state. So when I came back, I looked on my solar plexus area, and there was a big scar about 9 or 10 inches.
Wow.
And I had no clue what happened. So I went to my husband and he saw it. A friend of mine saw it. It lasted for 2 days and we even took a picture of it. We had no clue what had happened in the cabinet. All I can tell you is that I felt so much love, and I know that the spirit world will never harm you, but I did not have any explanation other than that.
Wow.
So I asked many different tutors and colleagues at that time, and no one had an answer. And I had to wait, I think, for 2 years when I met David Thompson, and he's a well-known physical medium. I met David and I told him the story, and he said, you know, I recognize this. You have to sit for physical, because this is the sign that I recognize as well. So he was the first one actually who explained this to me.
Wow.
And somehow I thought, okay, but still part of me did not believe it. When I look back, already in 2008, when I was a student at the Arthur Findlay College, I booked a sitting, and one of the tutors at that time, for the first time, mentioned the possibility of physical mediumship. In 2009, a year later, another well-known medium mentioned the possibility for physical mediumship. In 2015, I was working at the Zwanenhof at that time. One of my colleagues, she has like an aura camera. You know, you can make an aura picture and she can read it. And she had some time left. So she said, well, shall I take a picture of you? And I said, well, fine. You know, I never had one. So, you know, I just sat there and she took the picture. And she looked a bit puzzled. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, there is a color on the picture that the machine cannot capture normally.
Wow.
And she said, that's interesting. And then she asked me, do you sit for physical mediumship? And I said, yes. And she said, well, that's what the picture shows me, the ability and development of physical mediumship. So from different corners, you know, in the world, from different parts, also from the spirit world directly in seances where they told me, one day you will be able to materialize our world. I got all those kinds of messages within a time frame of 7 to 8 years. But to be honest, I did not really believe them. You know, it took a long time because I was able to accept that possibility.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, even with the aura photograph, yes. I know people are going to ask, do you know what color it was that would...
Yeah. Well, normally you see a lot of red where physical mediumship is involved, but there was also like, it was almost like gold metal kind of color involved with the red. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh yeah, I definitely needed to ask that question because I already know it would be blown up, you know. Wow, such an amazing story, and having all these people telling you and validating. And this is why I do the interview. So your experience of having that, the scar show up and you having to wait 2 years, I think you said, to David Thompson to get that. So this is the reason why I do it, because people start circles and some of them, they have no idea what to do. And so they're getting bits and pieces of beautiful advice from people to help them. So, oh my God, I love your story, Nicole. I love it. So you have been developing for quite some time now. And I love the fact that you weren't looking to become a physical medium, and it just happened, you know, Spirit World guided you definitely on this path. So I figure we would start out with, what is the difference? A lot of members have this, they get confused a lot. What is the difference between sitting for trance and sitting for physical mediumship?
Yeah, well, if you sit for trance, for instance, you don't need a cabinet.
Okay.
And a cabinet is used in physical mediumship, and especially in the traditional way. And the traditional way to me is the way where the spirit world works with ectoplasm. So a cabinet is used in physical mediumship to build and to conserve the energy, basically. But also it's a safety zone for the medium, in a way. When you do trance, you don't need a cabinet, you don't need music, you don't need darkness. It's just a sharing of mental and physical energies between you as the medium and the spirit world. It's a cooperation where the spirit world can learn to blend with you and to allow two minds to become one. If you do physical mediumship, and especially the traditional way, then the spirit world will use their power. You as a physical medium have your own vibration, your own energy that's being created within the cabinet. And within that cooperation between you as the physical medium and the spirit world, then if the conditions are right, ectoplasm is being exuded from my body. And the spirit world can use that ectoplasm to manifest themselves into the seance room physically, but also, for instance, to move objects. Sometimes they use it in a seance to levitate a trumpet, to levitate a medium, or to build a voice box if they don't use a trumpet. And that's the case with me. They don't use the trumpet, they build an independent voice box.
Wow. You know, there's so many different things happening within our group, like the clarification of terms. What types of physical mediumship are there?
Well, like I said, you know, you have actually two main forms. Like I said, the traditional form is based on the ectoplasmic form. And for those who don't know, I think it's good to explain a little bit about this way of physical mediumship. Well, ectoplasm comes originally from the Greek word ektos and plasm, which means outside formed. In the late 1800s, I have to say, it was, you know, the term ectoplasm was coined by Charles Richet, who was a physiologist, and he described it at that time as an energy, a spiritual energy with a substance. So that's how the term ectoplasm came into this world. I have to say, to make clear, we all have ectoplasm. You have ectoplasm, I have ectoplasm, we all have it. It's not only the physical medium, because it's an extension of your life force. But in case of a physical medium, the spirit world, and in cooperation with the spirit world, the physical medium is able to produce an abundance of ectoplasm. So that's the difference. There is a difference in vibration within the physical makeup of a physical medium, which gives that possibility. There is another form of physical mediumship, and I do have a little knowledge about it, but not too much, and that's energy-based physical mediumship. And I'm sure you've all heard about it, and I think one of the most known is the Skull Project in the 90s, but also a physical medium in England like Rita Gold. She was an energy-based physical medium. That's a way of physical mediumship where there is no ectoplasm used. So what do they use? What is happening? Actually, 3 types of energy is being used. And first of all, it's the energy of the medium. It's the energy of the sitters and the spirit world, but also the energy of the earth. So it's all combined to create, or for the spirit world to create that creative force to be able to manifest. But that's a totally different area and aspect. So I only have a little knowledge into that area. Okay.
I think I interviewed Robin Foy, and he actually shared a little bit about that.
You know, he's an expert on that.
Yes.
He is. If we look at the traditional way and the forms or types of physical mediumship, you can think of direct voice. And that's not the spirit world using the vocal cords of the medium, but using an independent voice box built from ectoplasm, or using a trumpet within the room so that they can have a conversation with the sitters in the seance room. So that's direct voice. And I think like Leslie Flint, and you've heard that name before, I think.
Yes.
You know, he was a very famous direct voice medium. Then you have, of course, materialization. And I think it's rare at the moment, but that's a form where, or a type of physical mediumship where the spirit world cloak themselves with ectoplasm to have, for a brief moment, a solid form, a solid body.
Wow.
There have been some great materialization mediums in the past, like Helen Duncan, like Alec Harris. But again, that type of mediumship is also very dangerous. And, you know, they are examples of where it went wrong, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
The spirit world can levitate you. They can bring a porch into the room. They can dematerialize spirit lights, spirit wrappings, you know, everything that is that can be heard, seen, or felt at the same time by the people in the seance room in an objective way. That's what physical mediumship is.
Wow. Well, that's a very good explanation. We do have a lot of confusion in the group members, so I definitely always ask that. One other question that has a lot of members: why is a cabinet used in physical mediumship? They always have different thoughts on that.
Yeah.
what exactly is it for? Why do physical mediums go in a cabinet?
Yeah, well, I think the cabinet was introduced somewhere in the mid 1850s somewhere by the Davenport brothers from New York. And they were the ones who started using a cabinet at that time, and it got its introduction into spiritualism. In a way, a cabinet, like I mentioned before, is used to build the energy, to conserve the energy in a more stronger, condensed way, actually. But the thing is, there is not a real need always for a cabinet to have physical phenomena. For instance, Stuart Alexander does not sit in a cabinet anymore. He used to do so, but he doesn't do anymore. So yes, if your physical mediumship is strong enough, you can have physical phenomena outside of a cabinet. Wow. But I also want to say to you, it's to me personally, I feel safe in a cabinet. It's my own safety zone. I feel safe in a cabinet because I know nothing can happen to me when I sit behind a closed curtain in a cabinet. So it's also a mindset. And as a medium, but mainly as a physical medium, you have to overcome a lot of psychological barriers because you are in that trance state. You have no influence of what will happen in the seance room. There is ectoplasm, and if someone is doing something silly, it might hurt you because the ectoplasm shoots back into the body and can actually cause burns or internal bleedings, or in the case of Helen Duncan, death. Wow. So, it's not just something we do or we choose to do. We have to trust. And I do trust the spirit world fully, but I don't always trust this world.
I you know what? A lot of people say that yeah. Trust the spirit world. You know. So, do you find sitting in the power important to develop as a trance medium or physical medium?
Well, I do know physical mediums who don't sit in the power and never have sat in that power. Personally, yes, I do believe that it's important to sit in the power. But I also believe that it should not be something we need to do, because mediumship is a state of being, not a state of doing. And I often hear people say, I'm not sure if I was in the power, what do I need to do? Well, actually, you don't have to do anything other than come to that realization that you are that power. Because you are that power. Mm-hmm. You are part of that divine creative force. You are that power. So it's not something that we achieve. It's something that we, if we go within, that we have the chance to realize and to become aware of the power that we truly are. Because that power moves us, that power guides us, that power knows the way, and that power is never wrong. So there is no wrong direction, if you are in touch with that power within you. So therefore, I think it's important to create time for yourself to sit. I also noticed in my own development that it helped me to keep my balance by sitting on a regular basis. And I noticed also that, for instance, when I had a few weeks off and I did not sit every night, that after a few days I started missing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like you get used to sitting in that power, into that presence of your own power and the power of the spirit world. And also I do feel that we don't give enough time to the spirit people. And I really feel that we need to build that relationship with them. And we can only do that by giving our time to them and say to the other world, okay, guys, this is my time for you. Help me to develop my mediumship. Help me to go into that direction so that I can be a better instrument for your world, so that I can be that voice, and so that I can bring some of your light into this world.
I love how you describe that about being the power, you know, knowing that you have the power. I love that. I also love how you said that with the cabinet. If your physical mediumship is strong enough, you don't need to be in a cabinet. But being in a cabinet, you also feel safe with. I also feel with the balancing of, you know, to me, it's like balancing, you know, your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So I've noticed that if I have not sat, and I didn't call it sitting in the power before, I just called it meditating. I didn't know there was a different label. But I noticed that if I didn't do that and go in and myself, that I would have some being off balance a little bit. So I did find that important.
Yeah, you know, it just helps you to have that stability, because a lot of people forget that if you work as a medium, or if you develop mediumship, and it doesn't matter if it's mental mediumship, trance, which is also mental, or physical mediumship, in a way you're with both legs in both worlds, and that can destabilize you as well. So you have to take care of the mind. You have to take care of the mind. You have to give yourself the opportunity to create those retreat moments. And, you know, just sitting for that moment, and even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, those are those retreat moments where you can, you know, balance again and stabilize the mind again.
Beautiful. I love that. We have another question. What is a trance control? Some people call it spirit guide or this, but what is a trance control?
Yeah. Well, if we take a look at trance, trance control is the most strongest degree of control you can have in mediumship. Trance control is nothing more than a spirit person, which is mainly one of the guides of the medium, taking control within the whole process of the mind of the medium. It's like that blending of that mental and physical energies. That takes a lot of time. You know, there are no shortcuts in mediumship. Like David would say, there is no such thing as McDonald's mediumship. You know, the thing is, we need to give it time to allow it to unfold. And that's why I said the importance of building that relationship. You know, you can't sit for trance and expect a control to come forward and suddenly blend with you and give, you know, the marvelous message. You know, it takes time. And if we allow to give it time, then eventually it will become more them. Because in the early stages of your trance development, when they try to get more control, then it will be mainly you speaking instead of them. But slowly, when you allow the process to continue, slowly it will become more the spirit world and less you. But still it's trance, still it's mental mediumship. So yes, there is always a part of you which is involved.
Yeah. And we do have a lot of members. They ask, like, how long is this going to take? And I, you know, my whole thing is I feel you have your whole life. You have your whole life to sit in spirit. And
do you know what I always say? I always say you will be the best medium on the day you die.
That's good. That is really good.
You know, in other words, it never stops your development.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah.
Whether that be mental, any of the mediumship, you know, mental, physical, trance.
Of course. And the thing is, it's not only developing your mediumship, it's the development of self. Because I'm a strong believer that your spiritual development, your personal development defines the quality of your mediumship. And I do feel that a lot of people forget that first step and jump into mediumship. You know, what happens when we start doing mediumship, we are confronted also with the shadow parts within ourselves.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, I worked as a psychologist, so, you know, I know what can happen. I know the mechanics. I also know that a lot of people blame the spirit world for some experiences that they have. Well, other things are actually happening. And I really feel it's our responsibility to work on the self.
Yeah. Oh no, I am like really big on that. I think that's where I went into before I even got into the mental mediumship. So I do feel that knowing yourself will help you with all of the mediumship as well.
Yeah.
And within the group, it's some kind of interesting is I've decided to do a couple of interviews just on spirituality or knowing more about yourself. So that's wonderful. One question I love to ask is what are the physical sensations that you experience while you are going into trance? Everybody says something different. Sometimes they say the same thing. But how did it feel, and how did it feel afterwards for you?
Well, it's different when I do a trance demonstration than when I sit in a cabinet and do physical mediumship. When I do a trance demonstration, for instance, then it's like a slow blending with the spirit world, and I do become more heavy, more sleepy, in that sense, but it's a very gentle process actually. When I do physical mediumship, to be honest, I don't do anything. All I do is I sit in my cabinet and I say to the spirit world, okay, here I am. And I don't go on purpose into a trance state. I did in my early stages because I was taught in trance, you have to go down, you have to go down. So every time I tried, I have to go down, and it didn't work. So I was struggling with my trance in my early days. I'm part of a scientific research at the moment, and I will tell you more in a bit. But that changed my view on trance. So since I let go, and since I don't go down anymore, but allow the spirit world to take me where they need to have me, my physical mediumship moved forward very quickly. Wow. And that's interesting. So what I feel when I sit in a cabinet, I'm just relaxed. I feel happy. I'm looking forward to spending time with the spirit world and the circle. And, even if nothing would happen, then we're still happy to spend that time, that sacred time together. But most of the times I sit, I relax, and then it's like a heaviness around the head that I start to notice. Every week for me is different, because some people will say, well, in order to do physical mediumship, and especially ectoplasmic mediumship, you have to be in a deep state of trance. I disagree. Wow. I am in a deeper state, and I have little recollection, but many times I am quite aware, and I know what's happening in a way or partly in the seance room. It's just like Leslie Flint. He was aware also when the conversations were going on between the spirit world and the people in the seance room. So, it's different every week. I cannot say, when you feel this, then you're on the right track, because we're all unique in our mediumship. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I love it. So sometimes what happens with me is as I'm listening to you, I forget that I'm supposed to ask you questions, because I'm like, wow, oh my God, you said that. So,
well, it's good to keep me on track as well.
Oh my goodness. So I know we talked a little bit about ectoplasm and where does it come from, but how and where does it escape the body? And how does the spirit world manipulate that substance? Or if you can explain that.
Well, yes. In my own personal situation, it mainly comes from the solar plexus, very occasionally from my left ear, but mainly from my solar plexus. For quite a long time, I had no clue that I was producing ectoplasm. I did feel like I had that body spasms. I'm strapped to the chair, and I'm glad I'm strapped to the chair, because I have those body spasms. And sometimes I was really in a lot of pain, in that solar plexus area, because something happened there and I had no clue what. So it took a while for me to understand, but also I needed confirmation of, like David Thompson, Stuart Alexander, who both said a couple of times in my home circle, to realize what was happening. So what happens is, in my situation, they take it from my solar plexus, or that's the part where it leaves the physical body. And most of the times, the circle members can smell the ectoplasm.
Wow.
And I can tell you, it's not a nice smell.
It's not a nice
smell. And again, that's very unique to every physical medium. But it's like a sulfur kind of smell that fills the room. And there are those sounds like, it almost sound like running water, or kind of sound, like a slurping sound. Mm-hmm. That kind of sounds, they hear it in the room. I'm not aware of that. Mm-hmm. So again, it depends on the physical medium, how the ectoplasm is being exuded from the physical body.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, there is a picture taken in 2015 where you can see the ectoplasm coming from my solar plexus. But I burned myself twice in red light, because those pictures were taken in red light. So really, I'm not taking any shortcuts anymore. I did at that time, I love to experiment, I love to try new things. But I really noticed quickly, that I had to be careful.
When there were pictures taken and you felt when you got burned, was there a flash, or how does that work? And then did it just hit you and you got burned in your solar plexus?
Yeah. Well, that was a situation where I was in trance. It was not in my own seance room, but we have a bigger seance room where there are public seances at the Zwanenhof. Mm. And I was sitting in a cabinet with the curtain open, but we had the red light on. And there was a person making pictures from my circle, but without a flash, but just with the red light on.
Okay.
But I'm so sensitive to light, and that happens more often in the early stages, that only that red light caused the damage. So I was in trance. One of my controls started to speak, and he immediately stopped the experiment. He said, I have to bring her back because she's burning herself.
Oh my goodness.
So I couldn't do anything. I felt that I was in pain, but I was also in trance, so I couldn't do anything. So he got me out of the trance state, and then I had to cool myself for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And we have heard that, the burning, you could harm yourself with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh. This is an interesting question. Can physical, and you actually just kind of answered that, but I would like to see if you could, can physical mediumship affect your health? And if so, how do you or your family feel about the work that you do?
Okay. I think in all aspects of mediumship, it's important to take care of your health. I don't think that mediumship in general will make you ill. It's the you yourself as a medium, if you don't take responsibility for your health, then you create illness.
Yes.
That's what I think.
Yes.
But I do feel that we need to take care after our physical body. I take vitamins, I take minerals, and especially when you do physical mediumship, it's the magnesium and potassium that's very important. Yes. I had at least 2 colleagues who were hospitalized because of lack of potassium.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was actually a question in the group just recently about if they should take the supplements.
Yeah. So. What you can do, for instance, the spirit world, instead of taking this from the physical medium, they can also take it from somewhere within the room. So you can also fill a bowl with some minerals within the room, for instance.
I heard that too.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So as far as any harm, that would be mainly from ectoplasm that could potentially hurt you or burn you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, with whether it's trance in a trance demonstration or trance in a physical seance, you should never touch the medium. even if there is no ectoplasm, you should not touch someone who is entranced, because it can be dangerous, because your blood pressure might go sky high because of, you know,
Yes.
the stress that kicks in. Yeah. So you always have to be careful.
Okay.
Yeah.
A question: are physical mediums born, and can anyone, can anyone develop as a physical medium? That's been an interesting topic.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that a true physical medium that works in the traditional way is born. Because you can have the desire, you can have the wish to develop physical mediumship in that way, but if there is not that element, that stronger vibration of spirit present within your inner core being, you know, you can sit for 30 years and nothing will happen. Yeah. Even if you do have that physical makeup and you do get the signs, because I also do believe that along the way you will get certain signs, and you sit and you don't have the right circle, you can also sit for 30 years and nothing happen. Wow. The circle, a good circle is more rare than a physical medium. Yeah. That's what I believe. Yes. It took me a couple of years to get the right people in my circle and to have that 100% of harmony, love, trust, and dedication. My circle does not expect anything. You know, they just sit, give their time freely every week, enjoy each other's company, and expect nothing in return. And that's how you should sit with each other. They are my spiritual family. They are my friends. And that's the bond we have created over the years. It's like a band, you know. When you're a physical medium, you're the lead singer, and the circle is the band, actually. Well, a lead singer needs a band needs a singer. Yes. So it's a cooperation. It's the circle as a whole that create a possibility of physical phenomena. It's not only the physical medium.
I think that that's one of the biggest things with people with their circles, is that they have found that the harmony within the group is actually one of the most important things. If you don't have that, it's not going to go anywhere.
It's paramount, yes. Yes. And I also wish to add to people, if you have a circle and you have the feeling that something is not right, you should listen to it. Because in the early days, there might not be spirit control yet who will tell you what to do. So you just have to trust your own intuition. So in the early days, if something doesn't feel right, just listen to your own intuition and don't be afraid of change. A lot of people are afraid of change, but change of a circle member, change of your mediumship is growth. Yes. Because if someone new comes in or someone leaves the group, it might be that the spirit world sees new opportunities within your mediumship, but it can only manifest if there is that particular change within the circle. Yeah. So always trust that.
Trust, but I do absolutely agree with you on that. It's very hard. You know, even members have said that within, you know, being a circle leader or being getting that information, they've had to act on it, and it's very hard when you are finding that you need to make changes. You know,
absolutely, and it takes time for the spirit world to get in control. It doesn't happen the first day. It doesn't happen the first year, maybe, you know. It takes time for the spirit world. Actually, I started sitting for physical in 2012, October 2012. I stopped for 5 months in 2013 because of a car accident, so I could not sit, and then we picked up again. It took until the end of 2015, early 2016, before the spirit world really took control.
Wow. That's actually good to know, because people do think that it's going to happen, you know, 6 months or in 6 months.
Yeah.
But yes, it does take time.
Yeah, it all started in 2012. You know, I did trance speaking. That way of control was there. Things in the room happened, like rappings, like music that was acting strange, like spirit winds, you know, stuff like that. But that was it, actually. It changed when David Thompson said to me to sit for physical and to sit in different conditions, because then I started sitting in the darkness. And then I started sitting with different music. And at that moment, within 8 months' time, from that moment on, we had our first independent direct voice attempt.
Wow.
And that's quick.
Yeah.
That's quick. But it was just because all the preparation had been done over the past years, and we just were able to create the right conditions at that time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So going back to something you mentioned about when we were talking about the cabinet, why is it necessary to restrain a physical medium to a chair during seance conditions? And is that a normal practice? And why do we do that?
Yeah. It's not normal practice, so to say. The thing is, it's something that this world demands. It's not the spirit world. The spirit world will never say to us, you know, I want you to be strapped to the chair. There are physical mediums who are not strapped to the chair. I am strapped to the chair, but I am strapped to the chair because of two reasons. The first one is that I do feel safe. It's like my safety zone, so that I can let go. That's the first part. The second part is, it's this world in a way that wants to be assured that you're still in the same place while the phenomena are taking place.
Yes.
So basically, what we are doing is we are adapting to this world. And maybe, you know, I sometimes question if we're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. I really do. But on the other hand, if you work in dark conditions, if you sit in a cabinet, I do feel that we have that responsibility, at least, to say to the people who come, you know, I'm still here in that chair, I can't move. And we all strive and hope eventually to be able to work towards the light. I think every physical medium is hoping someday to be able to produce phenomena into the light. But I would never do that when the spirit world is not saying to me, do it.
Yes.
They are leading.
Yes.
And they decide.
And that's that important part about listening and getting that guidance from them for your own.
Absolutely. Whatever this world tells you, you have to listen to the spirit world always.
Always.
And don't question.
We get a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to read this because it's kind of a long one. How can a person who is sitting for a trance medium know that they are genuine or are truly speaking with the spirit world and not an aspect of the medium or the medium believing they are in trance?
That's a difficult one. And I have experienced that myself. Before I developed my own mental mediumship, I went once to a trance demonstration just out of interest, and it was in Holland. And I was sitting in the audience, and the medium was making a funny voice, and I was watching it, and I did not feel anything at all at that time. So I questioned that. Also, I questioned myself because I had no knowledge at that time of mediumship. But there was something within me that told me this is not right. Can you understand? There is one golden rule for me, and that's the presence of the spirit world. If you are sitting in a trance demonstration, you know, there is that inner knowing, that feeling that the spirit world is present, that there is that power that fills the whole room. It's that power that touches you. And that to me is the most important rule. If the trance medium would give philosophy, for instance, then I think it's important to realize that some of the inspiration should be beyond the knowledge of the medium. My controls speak English through me, but it's not my native language. You know, I normally speak Dutch. So they speak in a different language. Sometimes they use words in English that I don't know. Another aspect within trance can be evidential trance. Sometimes it happens that the spirit world brings in a loved one when the medium is in trance and provides evidence. Well, then again, the evidence should speak for itself. So there are different ingredients, but the most important, the golden rule to me is I need to feel the spirit world. I need to feel that presence. I need to be touched. Mm-hmm. My soul needs to be touched.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree on that. And as you're explaining this, I'm looking back to my own experiences and those two things that you said, feeling the spirit world and the evidence. And also the understanding of the philosophy that comes through. It has to be higher than what the person normally would be speaking. So I do agree with you.
Yeah. And, you know, from a psychological point of view, I'm very aware of the possibility of subpersonalities that's speaking through the medium. And that has been my greatest struggle in my own development. Because I knew, because I worked in that field, because I have that scientific aspect, you know, I questioned for a long, long time in my own development, is this a part of Nicole that is speaking, or is it a separate identity? Mm-hmm. You know, in the spirit world had a hard time with me in that sense, because I said, you need to prove it to me. You need to prove it to me that you are a separate identity. And one of my controls, Tommy, he proved it in a very evidential way. I remember I was working as a teacher at the Arthur Findlay College. It was about 3 years ago. And I was doing a private sitting with a German lady and a translator. And I was sitting in a chair like I'm sitting now. And behind me were those old heavy oak windows. Mm-hmm. And they were really heavy because you have to open them with 2 hands. And I was doing a reading and the translator was translating. And suddenly there was this big noise. And the translator starts to scream because the window slowly opened up behind me. Wow. And very controlled, it went down again.
Oh my goodness.
And she said, what's happening? And I said, I've no clue. And she said, is this normal? And I said, you know, it's just an old building. You know, I try to be professional. Yes. And I had to finish my reading. But it puzzled me. It puzzled me the whole week. What happened there? I told no one at that time because I thought, you know, they think I'm crazy or whatever. Yeah. So I didn't tell anyone. And 2 weeks later at the Zwanenhof, I had my Trance and Physical Week. And I'm the course organizer of that week. And David Thompson was coming that year to do some seances. And I didn't tell anybody there. I didn't tell David. And the first evening on the Monday, I had to teach another group while he was doing a seance. And his circle leader came back after the seance and he said, you know, tomorrow night, the spirit world wants you to be in the seance because they want to speak to you. And I said, okay. So I arranged that I could be there. And Timmy, who is a control of David, Timmy came over to me and he said, Nicole, do you know Tommy? And I said, no, I don't know Tommy. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing was that Tommy came in the seance out of the cabinet and he said to me, do you know about the window incident in England? I told nobody until that time. Wow. And he said, I was responsible for it because I want you to know that I waited almost 40 years to be able to work with you.
Oh my goodness.
So he needed my attention. And the interesting thing was that the next morning, because it puzzled me all night, the next morning, again, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Because when I was very young, I think maybe 2-3 years of age, I had a stuffed animal and that was a cat. And I always put the cat on top of my head because it kept the voices out of my head. So that was actually a habit, and now I understand why. But that stuffed animal was named Tommy.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, you gave me the goosebumps. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love hearing those stories.
Yeah.
How the pieces fit, you know?
Yeah,
journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So let me see. I have another question here.
Yeah.
how can I, as a developing trance medium, know that I am well, so you might have just answered my question, know that I'm generally in touch with the spirit world? Are there some signs that I should be looking for, or will spirit bring forth validation? I just realized you just answered my question there. Oh my goodness.
The thing is, you can induce a trance state without the spirit world being present, it's like in the hypnotherapy, you have different ways of going into trance, and you don't need the spirit world to do so. So if you wish to develop trance mediumship, yes, you need the spirit world to be there. You need the spirit world to learn to know your energy, to learn to know how to alter your vibration, how to blend with you. It's like that knowing, you need to give your time to them. That's the only way to be able to move forward. Allow them to unfold your mediumship. There is no teacher who can teach you mediumship. There is no teacher who can teach you trance, physical, or even mental mediumship. And if they say they can do, I would run away, because I really don't think it's up to us as teachers. What I can do for a student is I can guide you, I can help you to understand what's happening from my own experience. I can support you in any way, because it might be a difficult pathway, but it's only the spirit world who can unfold your mediumship. They are the ones. So it's up to them, and we have to give our time, to dedicate our time to them. Yes. And then you will slowly start to recognize that power. You will slowly start to understand when they are there. You just know. You just know. Yes. And it's just gaining that trust and doing it over and over again and building that relationship. I do agree with you. I think it is that. It's, as much as like with my own, learning the mechanics and understanding it, really, it is you with your team, with your control, your guides. Yeah. We touched a little bit about different categories, and I know we talked about direct voice. Yeah. There was a lot of confusion about transfiguration, automatic writing, transmitting psychic surgery. Could you explain a little bit about those? Yeah, well, I hear often people saying when they sit in a cabinet and they're having an experience in red light, when they go into an altered state, that they have transfiguration. Most of the time it's overshadowing. Overshadowing is not physical mediumship. Overshadowing is when the spirit world blends with the medium to such an extent that the energy or the features of the face of the spirit person can be observed for a brief moment by 1, 2, or maybe 3, a few people in the room. Where if we speak about transfiguration, there is ectoplasm involved. And then the spirit world uses the ectoplasm to form a mask in front of the face of the medium, and they can put their face into the ectoplasm to show themselves. So that's very different. Yes. That's very different. If we look at healing, trance healing is not physical mediumship. Mm-hmm. It's healing being done from an altered state of consciousness. It's you trying to get out of the way so that the spirit world can move forward, so that the healing force and your healing team can bring the spiritual healing force into this world to the client, and you are just the vehicle for it, actually. But there have been exceptions. If we take a look at Harry Edwards, for instance, one of the greatest healers of all times, he could do physical healing, instant healing. If we take a look at John of God in Brazil, he is quite a well-known physical healer. He does psychic surgery. He does surgery without anesthesia, without, actually using a lot of attributes other than his hands and maybe a scalpel, that's all. But all under the guidance of the spirit world. That's physical mediumship. Wow. That's physical mediumship. Is trance healing, would that take a long time to develop too? Is that something that you can just
learn really quick if you could get out of the way, or would it be
Yeah.
take as long?
You know, again, if we take a look at the spectrum of trance, it's a very wide spectrum. You know, you go from a very light degree of trance, you know, like the daydreaming state, to the deeper states of trance. The thing is that, yes, if you have that inner desire to be of service, and if you have that empathy for people in both worlds, those are the ingredients for healing. And that's all you need. And then it's up to the spirit world to unfold you in that aspect and to take you where you need to be, you know? So again, yes, it can take time, and some of them might be fantastic trance healers with only, you know, maybe only a month. I don't know.
Awesome.
So again, it's very unique. It's very dependent on the ability of the medium, but also on, maybe I should also say the passion of the medium. Because, you know, I sometimes hear people say or ask even me, do you need to have an ambition? And if we look at the word ambition, ambition is coming from the mind. Ambition is behavior. If I look as a psychologist, having an ambition is behavior. It's coming from the mind. If we do mediumship, or if we unfold our mediumship, there is that passion, and that's different from an ambition. There is that quickening, that awakening from within, because if you awaken to the power of you, you can awaken to your mediumship. If you awaken to your mediumship, if you are on the pathway and listen to what your soul and how your soul needs to express itself in this life, then yes, then there is that sense, there is that passion, and then you start to live that passion, and it becomes a way of life. So I would rather call it a passion instead of an ambition.
Yeah, I love how you described that. So beautiful. What about the automatic writing? What exactly is that?
Well, part of my book, actually, I have received them through automatic writing. You know, automatic writing is different from inspirational writing. With inspirational writing, you can, as the medium, you can go into an altered state like we go into every day. You know, trance is a very natural state. We all go into a trance state within 24 hours. You know, sometimes we might drive on the road and think, oh, I just missed that sign or whatsoever. And then you just slipped into that altered state. Well, every aspect of mediumship is performed, is practiced from an altered state. So if you altered state, you can write inspirationally. You can blend with the spirit world, and just the inspiration comes and flows, and you just start to write. Where if it's concerned automatic writing, then the trance is of a deeper control, and it's the spirit world using your hand, your pen to write.
Wow. Okay.
So you can write inspirationally with your eyes open. Automatic writing, there should be a deeper trance state, and you don't have your eyes open.
Wow. Okay, I'm glad that you clarified that.
Yeah. But there is one more interesting thing that I'd like to add, because I just briefly mentioned the scientific research. I think within the field of trance, there is a lot of misconception. And I think we come slowly to a point now where we have to realize that we as teachers teach trance in the wrong way. Because it's not about going down. You know, when you go, you know, when I went to trance teaching, and I only had a few workshops, and it was mainly the spirit world unfolding my trance, I was always taught you have to go down and relax and go into an elevator or stairs or whatever. The interesting thing is, I'm involved in a research with a person who does EEG measurements. And she is investigating a few physical mediums, me and 2 other well-known physical mediums. And I cannot say yet anything about the final results because that might take another 2 to 3 years. But the interesting thing is that a lot of people, and also the physical mediums who have been tested so far, don't go into one of the deepest states of trance. They go into one of the highest states of consciousness.
Wow.
So they go into gamma instead of into delta.
Interesting.
It is. And we noticed that a lot of people with a healing ability go up as well instead of go down.
Interesting.
So if your natural tendency is to go up and you are taught to go down, then you get that struggle.
Wow.
Because you know, deep trance is used by the spirit world because they have to move the medium out of the way. You know, the mind of the medium needs to be out of the way to produce the phenomena. That's why in some cases the medium is put into a deep trance state. But those who are brought into the highest states of consciousness, that's the state where your consciousness or the medium's consciousness becomes one with all, with everything there is. So there is only one consciousness. So basically there is no barrier for the spirit world to remove anymore.
Very
so
interesting.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad that you included that in there. I'm going to pause for 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. So first, before we go on, we were just talking about automatic writing. So I wanted to show you Nicole's book, Silver Cloud. Let me see if you can get that. Silver Cloud Beyond Words. And I actually just received this past Friday. And
wow.
I'm going to tell you that this is not a book that you're just going to sit there and just read really quickly. It's a book, at least for me, that you take your time with because the words and the writing in it is so beautiful. It makes you think about things. So if you have a chance, where can we get this? And I think it's Blurb. Is it Blurb?
Yes, you can buy it on blurb.com. And it's also available. And also people can send me a message and I can also send it directly to people.
Oh my God. And I'm so glad. I didn't think I was going to get this in time. Lucky enough, a whole week early, but oh my God, you guys got to check out the book. It's wonderful. Also, I want to mention that Nicole has a website. It's NicoleDeHaas.ni, but it's it's going to be updated in about a month. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and it's .nl.
.nl. Oh my God, I wrote N. I'm an I. Sorry. .ni or NL. Just out of curiosity, Nicole, are you offering? I know that you have courses that people can take.
Yeah.
Do you do anything online? I always ask that because not everybody can get to where you are. Are you currently thinking about doing that in the future?
Well, I struggled with that years ago, that I thought, you know, I'm not the one who wants to go online and wants to do that kind of stuff. I love doing lectures. I love informing and in a way being an inspiration to people.
Yes.
So yes, if that's the case and I can speak about certain subjects, I would love to. But I don't feel on a personal level that doing some practical development online would suit me.
Okay. Well, definitely check out Nicole's website. So again, NicoleDeHaas.nl.
Yes.
Perfect. And again, the book. Oh my God, definitely get the book. And we'll have all of that in the comments when we release the interview. So here's a wonderful question that we were talking about. As we're sitting to develop, is the spirit world, are they like, do they have it all together or are they developing as well?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good question. The thing is that, yes, the spirit world is developing as well, of course. They're always finding new ways to be able to work with us because they also have a reason and a purpose. when we speak about physical mediumship mainly, they have a reason and a purpose to come through. They have a reason and a purpose to manifest and to bring the reality of life after life into the seance room. Because where mental mediumship can make you a believer, physical mediumship turns you into knowing. And the thing is that they will do and try everything possible within the possibilities they have. You know, they have the circle, they have the medium, they have all those ingredients. It's like a laboratory. I always call it like a laboratory, the seance room, where they have the possibility to experiment. And that's what they do, also behind the scenes. And quite recently, they told us that before they bring something physically into the seance room, like for instance, a materialization, they first practice it in the spirit world and try to perfect it a little more, and then try to bring it into the seance room. Like I said earlier on, I think every physical medium has the wish eventually to be able to work in the light or some light circumstances. The interesting thing is that my circle is on a pathway where the spirit world is at the moment experimenting with illuminated ectoplasm.
Wow.
So they bring light or a form of light into the ectoplasm so that whatever they are doing can be seen in the seance room. Wow. And it's only the early stages of working in that way, but they are experimenting. So if they manage to do that, you know, we don't need external light, because everything that happens then can be witnessed within the whole room. And that would be incredible.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, see, I will be honest with you. I have never sat in a seance, in seance conditions. So I live vicariously through many of my friends that tell me or the pictures I see, but one day I will be there. One day I might be able to smell sulfur in the seance.
You are very welcome.
Oh my goodness. It'd be wonderful. Let me see. So as a physical medium, I love philosophy. I love when it comes through to spirit. You find that as important as well, coming through from spirit. Absolutely.
Philosophy is not only limited to physical mediumship. You know, I think philosophy is an aspect of mediumship, is an aspect of spiritualism. And, you know, you can do a demonstration as a mental medium, which I also do. And I can be on a platform and I can have a contact for someone in room and bring a message, but that's a personal message to that one recipient in the room. Where if I would give an address or of philosophy of inspiration, that can be a message to the whole audience. And that's why I love philosophy. That's why I feel it should be part of mediumship, and I hope that people become more aware of the beauty of it.
Oh yes, I totally hope so too.
Yeah.
Now this is an interesting question because a lot of members ask this. In your experience, does the New Age approach, such as balancing and opening the chakras, play a part in the mechanics of mediumship, in your understanding?
In my opinion, they don't play a part in the spiritual or physical mechanics of mediumship. They do or might play a part in the psychological part of mediumship. You know, if I take a look at my own development, yes, before I started doing mediumship, I was known and experienced with energy work. I knew all about the chakras, and I knew those things. I used to start to implement them in my early days in mediumship because it was, you know, again, like a safety zone. You know, it was a route that I used to get into that power. But quite quickly I found out that it didn't matter at all. You know, it's just that mindset that you need to create. And, you know, if it helps you as a medium, you know, to stand on your head of, you know, whatever, then do it.
Yeah.
If it's helpful to you to get the right mindset to be able to work as a medium, just go with it. But I don't think it's necessary. I think it's something we created, like the Pavlov effect, you know. It's something we created so that it helps us psychologically to quicker adapt to the energy and the situation.
I actually like how you said that, because I asked for myself, I did the same thing. It was, you know, going into the chakras. And then at one point I finally stopped doing that. And I realized, wait a minute, it doesn't matter, because I'm not focusing and doing that. But I do believe that whatever will lift somebody up or feel them to be into that higher state of mind, that it'll work if they feel like it does. But yeah, so that's very interesting.
Absolutely. But if we go back in time, you know, and we look back 150 years ago, all those pioneers, they had no clue about chakras, you know, and they still produced the most amazing phenomena.
Yes, that's very interesting. That's very good to point that out.
Yeah.
Should we set a clear intention of what we are sitting to develop? Trance, physical, direct voice, trance healing, or should we allow the spirit world to naturally allow that to unfold?
Yeah. Well, I would suggest in the early stages of development, where you actually have no clue what direction the spirit world wishes to take you in, just to sit for them in, you know, on your own with a like-minded group of people, and just sit for spirit and see what happens and what can be unfolded, because it's up to them. As soon as the direction is more clear, then yes, you can have that intention of, okay, this week, this night, we're sitting for physical, for instance. But still, I don't put any limitations or barriers on the spirit world, because it's up to them what they want to develop. You know, I might have in my mind, oh, I want to be a direct voice medium. And they might think, no, she will be a materialization medium, for instance. And if I don't go with that, if I don't trust, you know, I'm stopping the process. It's the greatest thing that we need to overcome is trust.
That's trust.
We have to trust the spirit world, no matter what happens, even if we think there is no escape, even if we think, you know, our mediumship all collapses or whatsoever. We all have those phases, you know. It's not a static development. It all goes in ups and downs, in circles. Yes, we do have those moments, and those are the moments where we need to come closer to our own self. Those are the moments that are the moments of growth, and those are the moments where we have to really trust and say to the spirit world, okay, I have no clue where I need to go. I have no clue what to do, but help me. Help me, show me the way, and help me. That's all we need to do.
That's all we need to do. I love that. Thank you for that. What has been the biggest mistake you have made in your development?
Well, that was not an easy question.
That's another good one from the members.
Well, the thing is, you know, we're human, so we make mistakes and we learn from them. And I made quite a few, but one of the biggest that I made in my earlier years is that I did not listen to the spirit world, but I listened to the people that were teaching me in what I should become. And if I would have listened to that, I would not have been on the pathway of physical mediumship. Wow. So actually the biggest mistake was not to listen solely to the spirit world. Wow. Another big mistake that I see happening a lot, and also in my own development, is the pressure of this world. As soon as you step into the light as a medium, as soon as you step into the public arena as a medium, whether you're a healer, a physical medium, or a mental medium, it doesn't matter, then the pressure of this world can be very difficult to cope with in your mediumship. It even can take away the pleasure and the joy of mediumship. And it did with me for a couple of months in my whole development, that I thought, what am I doing? Why, you know, what am I doing it for? And I realized at that time, you know, it's not about this world. It's about being a voice for the other world.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating that one moment in, you know, in eternity of time, to give a loved one the possibility that, you know, they might have waited years for it, for that one moment to reach a loved one, to be that voice for them. And if we keep realizing that, then we can let go of the pressure of this world. Because this world wants you to perform as a medium, and it's not about performing. It's not about performing, because that takes you away of the true purpose of mediumship.
I think if you always ask yourself why you went on to this path, and you stayed with that passion, because really it's that passion. And if you stop having that passion, you have to step back and align again to that.
Absolutely.
I love how you are describing things, Nicole, because you're making me sit here and you're actually helping me think about, you know, whatever I'm doing, make sure you're doing it, you love it. And that's, you know, if you just have that joy, and the reason why you're doing it is just be of service. That's the only thing, you know?
Absolutely. You know, the thing is, if we in this world, if we don't learn to listen to our soul's purpose, if we don't listen to how our soul needs to express itself in this life, then we create problems on a physical level. You know, when I do a private sitting with people, you know, they come in with all different kinds of problems, financial problems, relationships, work, whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But in the foundation, it's all the same problem. They don't live to what their soul needs.
Yes.
And that's what we should learn.
I absolutely agree with you. And if I didn't listen that day when I heard them tell me to open up this group or to do these interviews, this wouldn't be, you know, but I know that that's how I could be of service right now to help others and have, you know, just be the middle person and have all the beautiful ones come through.
You're doing a wonderful job. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And the spirit world needs not only platform mediums. Mm-hmm. The spirit world does not only need physical mediums. Mm-hmm. They need people who have their heart in the right place. Mm-hmm. And from that inner desire wants to be of service in any way, you know, and they will always use your quality and your ability.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me see. So the last question, that was a very interesting one. I think I'm going to have some water while you're doing it too. What has been the most difficult thing to overcome in your development?
If I take a look in my mental mediumship, it's actually the trust, I think, but also being on a platform. You know, I have to be honest, from a personal point of view, I'm not a platform person. You know, I had to learn to be a platform person. When I was a child, I stuttered for many years and I could not say one normal sentence, for instance, and it took me years to overcome that. And if I thought then that I one day would be on a platform on a regular basis and speaking to hundreds of people, I would not have believed it, you know. So that's a thing that I had to overcome in my mediumship in general. But there is that tendency within me that I'm slowly going back from the spotlight into the darkness of the seance room. And that's a very natural process. And I allow that process to take place. And I know that, you know, just within time, it will just be a matter of time that I will do more physical mediumship than mental mediumship, because it's all changing at the moment. The most important thing or difficult thing to overcome in the seance room and physical mediumship was the psychological barrier, and stop questioning. I used to question everything. Oh, I feel this, what's happening? Oh, who's there, you know? I questioned everything, even afterwards when when my circle shared with me some of their experiences. My first response was, yeah, right. You know, I don't believe you. So I had to overcome that. And with the help of people like David and Stuart, who sat with me on a regular basis in my home circle, I needed those experienced physical mediums to be there and to witness what was happening and to say to me, yes, you're doing the right thing.
That must be nice, though, to have physical medium.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they are still very much involved every week. Yeah.
Wow. What is the most unusual thing that you have experienced while in trance or physical medium?
Well, the most unusual thing that happened in the seance room, or actually most scary thing in a sense, was, I'm afraid of heights. And it was last December when they tried to levitate me.
Oh my God.
And I was in the trance state, but not in a very deep state. So because I felt my chair lifting on the front, the fear kicked in and it got me almost out of trance and it stopped.
Oh, wow.
I always say to the spirit world, don't ever do that to me.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So that's in the seance room. I think one of the most extraordinary things in trance healing, for instance, is there is a young woman living in Switzerland. And I met her mom here at the Zwanenhof a couple of times. And she is disabled, her daughter. And she asked me if I could do some healing. And the interesting thing was that during one of my trance demonstrations, Silver Cloud came up to her, to the mom, and he said, I'm going to take care of it. And I had no clue what he was going to do. And I had no clue what to do myself. So I just said, okay, I will just sit for your daughter and do some distant healing and just send my thoughts of love and healing to her. But 3 weeks later, she sent me a message because her disabled daughter had over 100 seizures per week.
Wow.
And that stopped after 3 weeks.
Oh my God.
And the doctors had no clue what was happening. So I'm still involved in the healing process of this young woman, and she is making amazing progress.
Wow.
So that's one of the amazing things I do when I go into the trance state.
Yeah.
But there are so many different examples that I can give you. And the thing is, a lot of phenomena happen to me when I'm not in trance, when I'm actually in an altered state, but not in a deep trance state. We had, for instance, in November 2016, we had an apport in daylight. And it just appeared in front of my feet while I was teaching.
Oh my goodness.
I felt weird, and it was, after an evening within the home circle, and they said they were working towards something, but didn't tell what. And the next morning I felt ill and I didn't feel quite, in my own space, but I had to teach here. So, I just did it. And suddenly I was listening to a couple that was practicing and doing an exercise, and I was listening to them. And suddenly there was a strange energy going through me. And then the stones appeared.
Wow.
And we were all looking like, what just happened, because there were 8 people in the room witnessed what happened.
That's amazing. So you weren't actually in a seance condition. You were doing something else, however, in an altered state, and that an apports came through.
Yeah.
So that spirit, some other people have said that they work on you, even in your sleep state. So I found that very interesting.
Yes, I believe so. I also believe that the evening before we received the apport, they were working on that aspect as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt sick after? I mean, some people say as they're developing the physical mediumship and the experiences, have you ever felt ill? Like I know you said you started to feel weird. Does that come back? Do you feel normal quickly after that? Or does it take time?
It depends. Again, it depends every week. It depends how deep I am in trance. It also depends on the phenomena that they produce. last January, we had our second public seance with 20 people from outside. And, you know, to be honest, it was quite a big step for me to take, but it was the spirit world actually taking that step and saying to me, you have to do this. So it was the second time, and I went into the cabinet, and we did it in our own seance room, and it fits 25 people. So 5 people from my circle and 20 people from outside. And we had a major breakthrough, but it got me so ill because one of the fathers of the people in the seance room materialized, walked out of the cabinet towards his daughter and physically touched her in the way he would normally do. And Tommy was there to help in the whole process, and he gave a lovely message. Wow. The whole room was crying because it was so emotional for everybody. And afterwards, when I came back in the evening, I was drained after that seance. I really was drained. And that evening, it was like all the emotions of all the people came out through me somehow. And I have been ill for 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
So it really hit me in a sense. Yeah. Yeah. But it doesn't happen, you know, all the time like that. But this was just like a major breakthrough with, you know, an audience that I didn't know.
Are you, you know, like filming during your seances?
No.
Okay.
No, we don't, because, you know, I'm mainly developing in the home circle. I had no desire to go public until in November. Last November, the spirit world told me to do it once, and in January twice. There must be a purpose, and I think the purpose of January was to show us the potential for the future. Yeah. Because if they can do it then, imagine what they can do if we develop another few years. Yes. So no, we don't film into the seance room because the spirit world never asked for it. Okay. At one time, I wanted to be measured in the seance room, you know, with the EEG. Yeah. And I thought, okay, let's try it. And we created a box that was totally dark, and the laptop was in the box connected to the EEG, and I was wired. And we were just ready to turn off the light and to start doing the home circle. And the laptop didn't work. It worked just outside of the seance room. When we brought it out of the seance room, it worked again. But when it was in the seance room, the battery was dead. It did not work. Oh my God. So apparently the spirit world didn't want it to happen. Yes. Yeah.
And I think, you know what, I like how you always say this, you have to listen to.
Absolutely.
They're guiding you. They are the ones that are in charge. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I love it. I can't imagine. I mean, I can totally imagine being in that room when somebody walked out. I mean, I can't wait to see something like that. I know, I mean, I see pictures, obviously, but I see pictures of things like that, but the way you describe it sounds so beautiful. And the emotion that's generated from the sitters and the evidence and the loved ones coming through. Wow, I can just totally feel that.
And that's what I said in the beginning, you know, there should be that love. That love should be paramount. And that's what I always said to the spirit world. You know, I'm not very interested in apports, in levitation, in those kinds of phenomena. You know, if they want me to go that direction, well, they can do it, of course, because I won't stop them. But I do believe in a greater purpose, and I do believe that mediumship should be about communication, about bringing that reality of life after life back in. It should be about reunions, about reuniting loved ones with each other, and to bring healing and love into the seance room. That, to me personally, is physical mediumship.
I think that with any of the mediumships, if you know, either if I'm sitting or somebody's giving me a reading, or I'm sitting for a trance and information comes through or a loved one comes through, I will know, because my whole heart, everything, I will have that healing, and it is the love. You could feel it, you could totally feel it. So when I don't feel that, then I know and I question, and this,
Yeah.
Anyways, oh my God, I love talking with you, Nicole. I've learned so much already. So we are coming towards the end of some of these questions here. If you've ever had a bad experience while you're sitting, or if you've had a bad experience besides being burned, who would you turn to?
Who would I turn to? Well, if I would have a bad experience, it would not be an experience that the spirit world would give me. Okay? That's what I need to make clear, because the spirit world would never do that. So if I would have a bad experience, it might be something psychologically that's happening within me. Because if we go into the altered states, and especially into the trance state, we come also into the area in the brain where our traumas are stored in a way. So many things can happen from a psychological point of view, and still it might be unknown to the medium or to me what is actually happening. But I always know it will never be the spirit world giving me a bad experience. And if something physically would happen to me, like a burn or whatsoever, it's the circle that I need to go to first. And it's probably the spirit world stopping the whole procedure because they know something happened. And I trust them.
Well, I like how you said that no bad experiences coming from the spirit world. I love how you said that, because also with the interviews, I want to, one of the main reasons was to help people, because they had a lot of fear about trance and physical mediumship. And I wanted to clarify that you don't have to fear the spirit world. There's no place for that.
Absolutely. And there is no such thing in trance or physical as possession or the medium leaving the body. There is no such thing.
Yes. So there's like maybe 2 questions left. Do you have any advice on how to go deeper to let your guides have more control?
Well, it depends what you mean with going deeper.
That's true. We were just talking about that.
We just spoke about it, and it depends, it depends on how your mind works, on how your consciousness works. So I would suggest to any of you, if you want to develop trance, and whether you go up or down, allow the spirit world to take you where you need to be, because they can take you in that state. They can induce that state where you have to be, so that they can work through you.
I actually like that, because I do agree that I always thought I had to go so deep that and then if I went anywhere else, it wasn't deep enough. If I had the conscious,
But if you learn to let it go, then you stop struggling, and you take away the barriers for the spirit world.
Okay. Could you suggest, and this would be the final question, suggest some practices to develop physical mediumship? And that's if you are a physical medium.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, the most important thing you should do is to have a circle. Because that's where the development takes place. That's where we in mediumship have to go back to. We have to go back to the home circle. And that's where all the development takes place, actually. And I can explain a lot about how to run a home circle, and what to do and what's right and what would not work, maybe from my experience and from what I have learned from other physical mediums. But then we will sit here for another hour, I think.
that could be a whole nother interview, okay?
Yes.
So the circle is very important in that development.
Go into the home circle and sit on your own as well. Give your time to the spirit world. Sit, don't expect anything. Just say to them, this is my time for you, and help me with my development. And then it will slowly unfold the way it needs to be. Because, there is no right or wrong time. You are at the exact moment where you need to be now.
Yes, I love that.
So there are no mistakes you can make in that. Okay. We sometimes think that, but I do believe you are exactly where you need to be.
Where you need to be. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh my God, Nicole, I love this interview. I've learned so much just, in this almost 2 hours, I will say. Almost 2
Really?
hours. Yes. I know we had a short break, but I've learned so much from you. I'm so glad to have you here with us and explaining things. But again, you guys, Nicole's book, Silver Cloud Beyond Words, you can find that on Blurb.
Yes.
And what was that? Amazon? Is it? No, not Amazon.
No, it's at the Zwanenhof shop, or they can order it directly by sending me an email.
In the email, okay, yes.
Yeah.
And you can also connect with Nicole at NicoleDeHaas.nl, and that website will be updated again or in about a month, but definitely check that out. And I would recommend getting the book because it's beautiful. It's one you definitely want to take your time with. So definitely check that out. Nicole, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us here today and sharing your understanding and your knowledge. Because I know it's going to help so many people.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I really enjoyed it. And I hope you keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Nicole. You have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.